Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, challenges, welcome to the episode of Tatami Talk. My name is Juan. This is my partner, Anthony. This is a Judo podcast for Judo players by two Judo players. So, Anthony, how's your vacation going?
Well, haven't been on it yet. We're recording this ahead of time.
No, but as of this point right now, when this comes out, you are in Ireland right now.
Oh, let me imagine how it would be like right now. Right. Oh, it's great. I'm training with Conor McGregor.
You're in your castle. Oh, yeah. Oh, shit. I'm knocking this shit over. So you're in your castle with your personal chef, riding your white horse down the green plains of Ireland.
Yep. And I'm drinking whiskey, Irish whiskey and Guinness, training with Conor McGregor.
Well, that's a funny thing because you're telling me when you're out there, you wanted to try. We'll see what happens. Hopefully you're there right now. Follow him on Instagram. That you wanted to try and go to SVG sometime. Are you going to go to just watch? Or are you going to try to sneak in a role?
So to be clear, SVG is, as far as I know, where Conor McGregor trained, but it's like a franchise affiliation kind of thing. And the reason I'm interested is because the guy who started that affiliation was the one, it ties back into this episode. He was the one that started this whole concept of, I don't want to say started, but had this concept and marketed as aliveness in training, which is like not do static drills where the other guy's just laying down like a dead fish kind of thing. Which is not realistic. He wants the training to be alive and close to with resistance and everything. So he had this whole kind of like what the ecological approach kind of thing was talking about in the first place about keeping it coupled. So I'm interested in, he has his own little training method. I think he sells it in an online program too, but I want to train at one of these clubs because he makes sure they all follow this curriculum. So I want to go there and figure it out. There's actually a SVG in California, but it's pretty far. It's like, I think it was in Glendale or something, or Highland Park. I don't know where it is. It's far from me at least, but I just thought it was a good place to go. And I haven't decided if I want to go yet because my time there might be limited for training. So if I go to SBG, I can probably just bring no-gi stuff, which will be easier to pack, easier to wash and everything. Otherwise, if I train judo, I have a couple of judo clubs in mind. I haven't sent a message to them yet. So I haven't decided. Like I said, I haven't decided if I'm even going to train anymore. 'Cause honestly, part of me feels a little burnt out from work and training a little bit. So I'm like, maybe I should just like not do anything on this trip and just enjoy. So part of it is that, because once I bring a gi, I feel like and also message the club, I feel obligated to go. So if I get there and I don't feel like training, I'll feel like I have to be forced to go because I already committed. And I'm also the type to want to do stuff. If I say I'm going to do something to someone, I'm going to do it. Even if I don't want to anymore.
Well, also, you're telling me that during this episode, also, we talk about a certain school. You want to go visit, what's his name right now?
Nathan Burns.
You want to go visit his?
I don't know where he trains. I was saying it would be cool if I get to train with him in Ireland, but I don't know where he trains. So, but
okay,
it'll be cool to train with him. Yeah, maybe he's an asshole. I don't know.
You never know.
Yeah.
All right, so. Right now, as of this point, I know Anthony's in Ireland. That's what we're doing. Is part 2 now of the ecological training system, scientific training. Anthony, is there anything you want to talk about before we go into the episode?
Yeah, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button because I talked about last episode how most people do this at the beginning of the videos and it seems to work. So maybe we shouldn't do it at the end and just do it in the beginning.
All right,
because our amount of views do not match our subscriber numbers.
All right.
So even if we have a lot more listeners than viewers, like so on the podcast platform than YouTube. But if people actually, even if you only listen to this on Spotify or whatever, because Anchor is now bought by Spotify, then go to our YouTube channel and hit subscribe and like and everything. That just helps our stuff pop out in the front. And one thing I forgot to mention actually was we now have a Hollywood Judo Dojo YouTube channel. Yeah. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, do I have to? Before that, I'll do the regular. Please remember to smash that like button, like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your homies, tell everybody about us. That shit that every other YouTube channel says. So we are starting a YouTube channel for Hollywood Judo. We're gonna post there. It'd be Sensei Philippe's gonna be showing techniques on there. He shows some really cool ways of doing things that a lot of people don't think about, just things that he's learned throughout the years. He's going to try to post we're going to try to post videos once every 2 weeks, I think. He's going to do a technique, and then there might be some more stuff on there. I know that we posted, we did our tournament that we posted on our YouTube channel at Tatami Talk, but we also posted it on the Hollywood Judo channel. So please don't leave us and just go there, but you'll see stuff from there. You want to do more technique stuff, you go to Hollywood Judo YouTube channel, us with the podcast, and maybe we'll put up some more technique videos. It's not, if Anthony gets out of his lazy butt.
Let's clarify. It's not related to our channel at all. Yeah. Like Tatami Talk. It's Sensei Philippe's thing. It's the Dojos thing. Sensei Philippe's thing is everything that's outputted from that channel is his stuff, not us. We don't have any say or direction in it. You
might see us in some videos, but it's not us. It's not Tatami Talk.
Yeah, it's not going to be us, so don't expect to see us in there. Since Philippe has a wealth of knowledge, and I just want him. We both like the idea of him sharing his knowledge with the rest of the world before he dies, kind of thing. So
why do you say it like that all the time? Oh my God, this guy. Oh God.
All right. But also one of the things is the first video that we released, Hollywood Judo released on that channel is Sensei Philippe demonstrating the Kudiashi Barai video. Matthew, a brown belt from our dojo, directed and filmed it and edited it. We got a lot of positive comments about the production quality of that video and how it looks like a proper instructional that you pay for on Judo Fanatics or kind of stuff like that. In fact, they say it's actually better. So Matthew was actually open to, as far as I know, he's open to doing this kind of stuff. So if any of you guys out there listening is interested in having him work with you and film instructional or whatever, then feel free to contact him or contact us. We'll direct you to him, kind of thing. So, yep.
All right. So with that, let's go back to the part B or part 2. I don't know how we're going to label this thing yet.
Part 2. Yeah.
Part 2 of our ecological training, scientific training for judo and other martial arts nowadays, I guess.
And learning Japanese.
Right. And learning. We're going to talk about that too at the end of the video. All right. It's going to get interesting, people. It's going to get interesting in the second half. Okay. So without any further ado, let's get back to Christian. Back to you.
So, that's our approach to ukemi, and why I think the fully ecological approach, I think, is the best way for me. I don't know if you guys agree, but it's a constraint that we don't have enough skilled practitioners to throw these people in a controlled manner, in an escalating controlled manner, that I think it's not realistic given the constraints. So
yeah, I would agree. You know, I think you could probably do a lot of things in a fully ecological approach, but then you kind of go away from the judo-y aspect. Or, it's just a safety issue. So I think probably learning that would work. But if you're doing this on a big scale, you have to think about the safety. And, that's why we get all these these coaching certifications that have, think about concussions and stuff like that. So
yeah, I wish they actually taught you coaching principles versus just how to not get sued. But all right, next.
Stay sports safe. All right.
So I don't know if there's something you guys want to talk about. Otherwise, I suggest the next one.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the next one is the Japanese do it, the Brazilians do it, the
French
Hosenori Yamashita does it, so it has to be right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, off the bat, that kind of argument is called appeal to authority, the logical fallacy. But it doesn't mean someone. Even though they're like a judo championship, first of all, doesn't mean they know everything. And especially when it comes to skill acquisition and coaching. I mean, my favorite argument is, I think someone tried to discredit Caleb, I think, and was like, I want to see what his judo is like. I'm like, okay, but his coach wasn't teaching him this in this way. Like, what would it say? Like, what does it say about the science and the evidence and an approach when he didn't learn this way, but he's using it? So I want to see what his students' judo look like, but not his his own judo, because I want to see what the results of this method is, not what the results of his coach's method is. So that's what I don't like about that argument. But what do you guys think about that?
I would say, an appeal to authority. I think there's also like that. I don't know. It would be like an appeal to violence. So I saw Stephen Keston posted recently. He was talking, I think probably about,
Oh yeah,
Greg,
about that.
Yeah,
but
Greg being like, my blue belts can beat your guys.
I did think
I'm of that mind of Stephen.
I did think to briefly touch upon that. Juan, are you familiar with that? Oh,
yes, I am. I'm fucking dying here.
So, I think about that. A lot of people misunderstood what Greg said, and I think that I misunderstood what he said. But also, it's kind of Greg's fault because he's being so confrontative about it. I guess is a nice way to put it. First of all, he's not lying when he says like go to his gym. Like he won't charge you. Like try my blue belts out. But I don't think he's outright saying my blue belts would beat your black belts in a tournament. Because otherwise, why are they a blue belt, right? They would just be a black belt then. And he even in one of the podcast episodes describes what he in their club describe as blue, purple, brown, black, like what the standards are for each one. And I listened to all the interviews, so I honestly can't remember which one it is. But in one particular one, he did clarify what he meant by that is that come as a black belt and try and do one of these situational drills with his blue belt, and his blue belts will always beat you. So he's not saying, okay, black belt versus blue belt fight, like who wins? Like he's not saying the blue belt will win. He's saying like when we play one of these games where, for example, the job is to stay on top of the guy, like no submissions, so you're just staying on top. Go. He's saying the blue belt will win every time. And if you switch, like, okay, now your job is the bottom person is to get out. The top person is just to stay on top. Go. The blue belt will win every time. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. I think a lot of people misunderstand that. And if you put that into account, put that into the in context, then it's not that far fetched what he's saying, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, so Christian's nodding here. Christian's nodding here. So if you put that in, yeah, it would be like a wrestler coming in and saying like, okay, my wrestler will always take the back of your judoka kind of thing. Like, right, and you stop the moment to take her back. Like that's kind of what it's like. But that makes sense to me. Or another game would be like start in an armbar position, and you're just the top person in an armbar position is going to stay controlling the shoulder while the bottom's trying to escape. Like that's those are the kind of games they play. They're not doing full on sparring, unless I'm mistaken. And he's straight up saying that the blue belt can beat the black belt in a straight grappling match. Then I'd like to see that, and I would want to know why he's a blue belt then. Also, I think Stephen Kesting didn't read any of the interviews or kind of stuff. He probably just like saw excerpts of it and kind of stuff because he's a smart man. I think he can understand the arguments and look at Rob Gray's work and kind of agree with it. But I don't think he spent any time on that kind of stuff. So I think he's kind of just basically saying, stop being a dick. That's what he's saying, which is I can agree on. So, and part of the reason why a lot of people can't agree with Greg is the way he's presenting it, and that's part of just his personality.
But being a dick sells,
yeah,
especially in the BJJ community.
Yeah, especially in the BJJ community, it does. I mean, like,
does it really?
Just look at the quote unquote best grappler in the world.
He's also under Lloyd Irving, so that says a lot. But
oh, you love bringing that up. You always love bringing that up, don't you?
As he should, in my opinion.
Now I can't go visit his club anymore. I said that. But yeah, maybe I should cut that out. Maybe I should wait until I come back from my trip to upload this. Yeah, so that's what the context I think it is. But yeah, the whole Japanese does it thing. I brought it up with a discussion with someone else. Is people always forget that the Japanese do all these uchikomis and all these kind of drills, but they don't look at how much how many rounds of randori they do, how many hours a day they spend training. Like if you look at the randori to uchikomi ratio, I don't know exactly, but I would bet the randori far outpaces the uchikomi one. But I think people just see what the Japanese do, and then they do it, but they copy it, and then the randori is added to the end, like 30, like the whole warm up, uchikomi, nagekomi, randori, like that whole what's technique of the day? I forgot the technique of the day thing. Like I think that whole thing is what they keep. They copy the Japanese, but they ignore the part that they train like 6 hours a day, or like that most of the Japanese people started as kids in school as a school club, and they train every single day. And we don't have that here. Like we have to train more efficiently. We can't copy everything they do because we only most clubs are two times a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and recreationally it may be like 2 hours max, mostly an hour and a half. And we spend most of that doing uchikomi and only 30 minutes or 20 minutes doing randori, then that's not what the Japanese are doing.
Well, one thing when it comes to the Japanese, people always bring this up is always, well, so-and-so does this, this player does that. Like one, you're not that player. And two, especially with the Japanese, they're going to tell you, they're going to do it. Like you bought the videos. I know Anthony for one has bought the videos because he wants this beautiful Japanese uchimata that he cannot get. That he cannot get. He has a beautiful hanagoshi though, amazing hanagoshi, but a terrible uchimata. So he watches these videos, he looks how they do it, he watches the reviews, all stuff, and then he'll do it, but it's like, but that's not how they do it. Like they're keeping the secrets to themselves. And this is how any country's going to do it. They're going to give you a face value of this is what we're doing. Oh yeah, we're doing this, say many hours, we're doing this many uchikomis, this much randori. They're going to say this, but in reality, they got a secret thing in the back of doing totally different. Okay, so even though like face value is like, oh, the Japanese do all this, they teach, Japanese teach traditional uchimata, traditional hanagoshi. Then you watch their players do it. It's like, that's not traditional. That's not traditional right there. That's a variant. That's a different way of doing it. That's BS. So it's like people have to understand that there's one way people are going to practice it in the light, and then there's one way they're going to practice in the dark. And
this is the top level, judoka. Yeah. You got to remember, people. This is a sport where people send scout. Like, what was it? Chris Round talks about it. They go around scouting people's practices and look at their videos. Like, why would they upload something that they how their secret methods of training is? You know,
that's the thing. You get these people, especially I see this a lot with beginners, like white belts, citrus colors, that are like, but so and so does this. So and so said this in their videos. Like, yes, of course they said that in their video. And of course, someone that's outside judo, that's an outsider or non-grappler, will see that and be like, oh yeah, but they said that. And after you get these BJJ guys that will watch a judo video and be like, oh no, I watched so-and-so's video. I know how to do uchimata now. No, you don't know how to do uchimata. You know how to do the traditional Japanese or the traditional French or the Russian way or the Georgian way of doing it, but you don't know how to do it. All right. So it's just one of those things. I mean, it's just it's an annoying thing. Like they say, oh, but we do it this way, or I've done it that way. It's like, no, it's totally different. Like you have to understand that.
Yeah. So
Christian, take it away.
Well, to add on, Christian, do you have anything to add?
I would just like have another topic.
Okay. All right.
Finish your thought. Yeah.
To add on what you were talking about, how, yes, when I have the disposable income. So I bought a ton of the Judo Fanatic stuff. And I already mentioned that the reason I started Judo was because I saw Kosei Inoue do his Uchimata. So I wanted a copy. So I bought the Fighting Films DVD. And I probably watched every single French and Japanese YouTube video out there that has a Uchimata involved in it. And I've read all the books and all the Kosei Inoue stuff. And one thing I noticed was like, he's like, okay, this is how you do the uchikomi. Foot has to land at this exact spot every single time. If you watch the DVD, they actually say this, like the foot has each and every one has to be the exact same. The foot has to always land here. And then he was like, this is what it looks like when he does it. And he does the actual demonstration of the throw, and his foot's in a completely different spot. It's not in the spot that he was doing in uchikomi. Then you look at the competition footage and everything's different. The foot's different, the hand's different, the hip's different, the leg's different. So it's like, what the hell? And then I asked certain people at the time, forgot who. I asked a bunch of people. I was like, why is he showing it this way? I was a white belt all the time. Like, why is he showing it this way and doing it this other way? And they're like, oh, that's to build the fundamentals and all that, and the movement and the muscle memory, all that kind of bullshit. And then eventually you'll be able to do it. So I went into this endless cycle of doing, I just trusted the process, right? So I went into this endless cycle of doing the uchikomi and then doing the nagekomi and then trying it in randori. And I'm like, okay, that didn't work tonight. Okay, let me go back and do more uchikomi and do more nagekomi. Didn't work. And I did this cycle for years until I was just like, something's not right, you know? Like, and I think this is what Greg says too. Like with his drilling, he talks about his old club with Lloyd Irving, doing tons and tons of drilling, and he just doesn't see the improvement. And I'm like, something's not right. You know, like it's been like 4 or 5 years. This is by far the most practice technique I've done. And I can't land it a single time in a competition. Every time I do it, I get countered. Something's not right. And that by itself was not enough to convince me. But what started convincing me was, why is my Taitoshi working all the time and I never do Taitoshi uchikomis? So there was that. And then I started reading this skill acquisition stuff, and then starting all these bits and pieces are starting to fall in place. And it's because in randori, I'm seeing more opportunities for Taitoshi, and I'm trying Taitoshi more. So versus Uchimata, every time it doesn't work, I just assume that I didn't do the uchikomi right. In fact, I just didn't do it in the right situation in randori and haven't attempted it in the right situations. So I just have to go in, and I'm back to what we said before. I'm waiting for that perfect situation where uke looks like the position we do, not standard uchikomi, nagekomi positions in. I'm waiting for that situation to happen, but it never happens. So I'm forcing this uchimata to happen. That's not going to happen. So the moment I stopped doing that kind of movement and start looking at the mechanics of uchimata and just looking out for those openings and trying a randori, I'm starting to see more success. I still suck at it, but definitely more success than 2 years ago when I was still following that stupid pattern. So for me, that's what kind of made me drink the Kool-Aid, is what you would call it. Because I'm like, there's definitely something part of it. And I'm going to let Christian get a chance to talk about his topic, because again, what sparked this was not Greg's video or podcast. It was, for me, it was why am I not learning French and Japanese, even though I've been studying really hard and all that stuff, is because I don't know what the topic that Christian wants to talk about, but there's this concept of desirable difficulty I want to talk about. So I'll let Christian take it away now.
Cool. So I would say, so the main thing that I like what we said before, I think Anthony's more on the sort of 80-20 ecological approach, and then Juan and I are not that far. So I do like the concept of the ecological approach, especially for creativity, and then, you know, making games that will help you sort of explore possibilities or affordances, as they would say. But I honestly think that, you know, talking about ecology, you know, we talked all about this, like, you know, sort of what's possible or not possible, or how you perceive things. I think the big thing that not a lot of people talk about, or maybe they do, but is the gamification. I think the gamification aspect, like the environment aspect, is really huge. So, like, you know, there's a saying I heard Riley Bodycomb say. He's an American Sambo guy. He's like, rules dictate behavior. I think that speaks so well to everything we do. I think that's why we have styles. Honestly,
yeah, rules is part of the ecology, the environment, basically.
Yeah, it's part of the environment. But, you know, how you can dictate the behavior just by tweaking the rules and, you know, tweaking your environment. So whatever you're trying to achieve. So this is how it will tie back to the ecological approach. So if you want them to do something, you change the rules or the environment to get them to do something. So that's where I use it in my teaching. So, you know, just like, you know, before this came out in the sort of BJJ world, we some schools were doing, probably most schools were doing positional sparring. I think positional sparring on the ground, super, super, super valuable. Like, teach something from half guard, work on the half guard from that position. Like that's super easy. I think in judo, it's a lot more complicated just because the dynamics of it are a lot, like he says, the invariance of what we're doing on the ground versus on the feet. So, gravity being on 2 feet versus, if you think about it in like a 3D plane, being on the ground, you can only move so many ways. If you're standing up, infinitely many more ways. So I think, when you have safety involved, that's where, you really get into there. So if you play around with the rules, that's why I think Anthony and I are so into talking about the rules for judo, because it changes judo.
Yeah. Grip fighting is a perfect example. Like when you change the grip fighting rules, you start seeing people do weird shit. And different throws different throws become more popular or less popular. Like, why don't we see Haragoshi anymore?
That's what I would say. Like
I totally agree.
The gamification is like a huge thing. I don't think gets talked about that much.
Yeah, like think about it. How do kids learn stuff? Like, but before I forget, let me just talk about the environments. Like some of the studies that they said, for example, in the podcast with Caleb. The podcast host was a Taekwondo Olympic trainer or something. I don't know. His goal is to train Olympic Taekwondo athletes. And they did some studies in Taekwondo before that whether showing the athlete the scoreboard or not, or have them start the match the game with being down a point or up a point, vastly affects how the person behaves or trains. So these are constraints you can adjust in an environment that determines how they do. One thing I liked was I was this past Golden State tournament, those dollar mats that they use at tournaments, they're different from the tatami mats that we have at the dojo. And I noticed that sometimes why I go to certain tournaments and this floor feels more slippery, other than the fact that some mats are actually slippery, it's because they're squishier and you just move differently. So that all affects how you train and how you fight. Another example, Greg talks about this that I used in class and it worked pretty well, was like, how do you deal with people that are spazzy white belts or people that go way too hard? And he was like, I just increased the round timer to 10 minutes. Like if you make it like 10-minute rounds, people really quickly learn that they have to be very technical and not like spaz out because they're going to gas out. Versus when we see this in our dojo all the time. You have 4-minute rounds. People go hard as hell for that 4 minutes and they sit out for a round, or they'll find an easier person to go with for a round. And then they'll go back to like a super hard round and all that kind of stuff. So for what I did in the beginner's class was I had more advanced people go with these big, spazzy, strong white belts, and I had them do a 10-minute round. And then they start gassing out, and then they say, I need a break. I'm like, nope. Keep moving. I don't care if you don't attack or you fake an attack, like you just tap the foot or something. You just need to keep moving. I said, just move with him. I told the other guy, don't throw him. Just make him move you. So after that 10-minute round, that's when I pair them up with other beginners, and they quickly learn to, oh man, that's a 10-minute round. I've got to be careful versus telling them to calm down, use less strength, all that kind of stuff. They don't have the self-control or the self-realization of what they're doing. So you have to modify the constraints to the environmental constraints to get them to do this kind of stuff. But back to, before I forget, does that kind of, makes sense, I guess. But yeah, before I forget,
you make sense.
There was one more thing I wanted to talk about from the previous topic that I forgot to talk about, was that a lot of experts do things they don't realize that they're doing it. Does that make sense? Like, for example, I talked about Kosei Inoue as saying the foot has to line here every time, but he doesn't do it. So they did some studies on, I think, baseball athletes and volleyball athletes and all that kind of stuff. And they asked them, like, I think the most famous example was asking professional tennis players, like, I don't know tennis, but he said, how do you hit the ball or something? It's like, oh, you got to roll your wrist all the time. So all these people that they taught their students, they looked at them and they all rolled their wrist, like the amateurs. But then when they looked at the professional people, they don't roll their wrists. They never do, almost never do. So they think they do, but they don't. Another example I mentioned in class, baseball athletes, they asked them where do your eyes look at when you hit incoming pitch, and they're like, you got to focus on the ball. You have to focus on the ball. So they put eye tracking software in them. They're not even looking at the ball. They're looking at the pitcher. They never look at the ball. They look at the pitcher, look at their action, and then what they do is basically subconsciously time their swing to how fast the guy looks like he's pitching. They never look at the ball, basically. So after they did that, what they did was change the size of the ball. And then they're still not looking at the ball, and the ball flies at a different speed, and they miss the pitch like a lot more. They miss the swing a lot more. So all these professional athletes that are supposedly best at their game are saying what they think they're doing when they're not actually doing it. So you can't always trust their word for it when, that guy's an expert, so he knows what he's talking about. You have to actually look at what they're doing. So that's what I wanted to say. So, and Christian says we need mat enforcers. Like I'm not into that kind of thing. So especially in America where lawsuits are a thing, I don't want to have any part of that.
Just put your heaviest guy with the spazziest guy.
Yeah, but then they say that they're bullying them, you know?
True. But what are they doing if not bullying the other people by like spazzing out?
That's very true. But a lot of them aren't doing it on purpose. So
they're doing it subconsciously.
Yeah. I mean, this is becoming a long episode, but there's what did I say I wanted to talk about before? I forgot.
I know. Is there anything else about this ecological way of teaching you guys want to talk about? Any more situations, games, what this means, how we've been doing this in judo for a long time, how we've been doing this in martial arts forever, it seems to me, because like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's always been this in martial arts. The best way to get better at something is to actually do it. But I believe you do need to start off with the basics of learning stuff first before you can just be tossed into the fire.
Yeah. So a lot of people will hear this and then think like, oh, then this just means we're doing randori all the time, which is what some schools do. But you'll see.
I have brought this up before. Yeah. We do have Yaku Seiko Geiko in judo, and I think that's something that we need to like. I love teaching and using Yaku Seiko Geiko.
But so Yaku Seiko Geiko, basically you're taking turns throwing, which is it lowers the intensity, but you're not recreating the situation. So when I say randori, it includes the traditional French randori, Yaku Seiko Geiko, whatever you call it. You might not always recreate these situations. So that's the point of the games that Christian was talking about, and positional sparring is that you're using, let's say you have 10 minutes, you're trying to recreate that situation as many times as possible within 10 minutes versus in a no constraints randori, you might be grip fighting, you're not recreating those situations. A lot of people do spam shitty sacrifice throws, like, then you're just wasting time. So that's the problem with just not having the constraints. And I think the job of this is where the hard part is as a coach, is you have to design these environments and constraints for the athlete to exhibit the behavior you want to see. And then if you don't see it, then you have to change the constraint or the environment right away. You can't just, I realize this, I planned the game and then the guys aren't doing what I wanted them to do. Then I have to on the fly change told them like, okay, now you can't do this, you can't do that, and to see if it tweak that to see if it changes the behavior. And that's the hard part, is the coach has to foster this environment to do this versus randori, you just let everyone go free for all, you know. And the other problem with just open randori is a lot of people will feel comfortable with a certain technique and they'll never develop other techniques. One really good example is a lot of people recently in our dojo spams Gochi Makikomi, like, and it works, so they keep doing it. When I'm like, okay, once someone figures out that's the thing you do, they're going to stuff it and you're never going to do it. And you need at least a really good forward throw to pair up with it. So people feel threatened by something else and it'll open up to the Gochi Makikomi. And I mentioned that many times, people still aren't doing it because the environment in randori is just I need to throw the other guy. So why would they have a situation come up where they try Taitoshi, didn't work, so then don't try again. So that's part of the coach's job, to be able to foster this kind of development, even against the person's will, basically. I think
I would say, same thing for that, like Kochi Makikomi. You'll see Sankyus, green belts in Canada. You'll see, I always call these two throws are the green belt throws, because once you learn them and you start throwing black belts with them, you're like, oh, Makikomi, any Makikomi, like, a twisting, like a Soto Makikomi, or a Tiny Toshi. You're like, oh, I got a throw I can throw black belts with. It's not that hard. They just like go down that rabbit hole and never develop the rest of their judo. So yeah, I always tell my guys, I'm like, word of warning, when we show these ones, yeah, especially Tani Toshi is dangerous. But don't rely on them forever. It's like, don't become a Sutemi master. You want to develop the rest of your things. Like, learn from me. I went down those rabbit holes. Except for Makikomi. I don't do Makikomi.
Yeah. There is a couple more things I want to talk about. What you mentioned, positional sparring. A lot of BJJ clubs I've been to do that, but it's not that they don't have the right constraints. So when I first saw Greg Sodders post this on a BJJ subreddit, a lot of people were like, yeah, we do that already. It's positional sparring. And I'm just like, man, most of the places I've been to, you don't do positional sparrings correctly. The way they work is like, here's the technique of the day. We're doing a Kimura trap or whatever, or let's say a guard. Let's make it more simple, like passing the guard into an armbar, like mounted armbar. Let's just say mounted armbar, right? Then they're like, okay, that's the technique of the day. Now start from mount, reset on pass, sweep or submit, right? Or taking it back, reset. And then the first thing that people would do would be like swap from a mount to like side control. Like you're mounted on the person, but then because you're more of a side control player, then it's like, okay, ready, go. So you swap the side control. So now you just effectively turn the mounted armbar game into a side control game. Like, and also another example is like, we're doing full guard passes drill, right? People would like, the moment I push down the guard, they swap the start, they just swap to like a butterfly guard or something. Then you're just, that's not positional sparring. You're already just changing the guard, and then you're off into like open sparring basically at that point. It's just the constraint now is you're sparring, but you stop on pass, sweep, or submit. So that's nothing. You're not learning that technique of the day per se thing at all. And reading this kind of stuff has really made me not want to go to BJJ class a lot, because a lot of places I've been to, it's like, okay, class is an hour long officially. So I go on my lunch break and then I show up on time most of the time. And then people are late, so they start 10 minutes late. Then they do 15 minutes of warm up, and there's already like half an hour gone almost. And then they do technique of the day. Then we do the positional sparring. And then the last 10 minutes of class or 15 minutes of class is rolling. And that's when I actually get to try my stuff out. And then if I actually want to get actual rolling in, I have to stay past that hour and potentially be late for work and stuff. So that's, for me, it's like, man, we just did all that stuff in the beginning that's not transferable to anything. And most of that stuff, I never do it again. So, and why are we spending so much time on it? Like, I'm not saying it's useless, but you can spend just like, this is the position in a day, blah, blah, blah. And then if you can't set the constraint, create a game for it correctly, then just spar, but that's why I think people who say, oh, we already do positional sparring, most of the time they're not setting the constraints correctly for the proper behavior to emerge, because they never adjust it. If they see people not doing the mounted armbar, they're doing something else, then it's clear that you didn't set the constraints properly for the game. But a lot of places teach like this. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's places that just roll. And that's kind of like a sink or swim mentality. But to me, it's like, I'd rather do that than shrimp up and down the mats, and I already go to multiple classes a day. So I have to shrimp up and down the mats for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes throughout the day. So yeah.
Such first world problems, Anthony. You're such a first world problem guy.
First
This is one of the
world
arguments we have sometimes. He complains about like, I already done like 500 push-ups this week, or I don't want to do any more push-ups. Well, is it my fault you go to these classes that have warm-ups like a normal class?
Yeah, I mean, the warm-ups, we already talked about it. I think there's different approaches to it. And you could, why you don't warm up in the morning? Do you warm up before you get up? Do you warm up before you take a walk? Do you warm up before you open the curtains? Like, just do the thing you want to do.
You do some arm circles when you get out of bed in the morning. You know, do a few sit-ups where you sit up out of bed, you know?
But you can
do some light stretching.
You can just do the movements just at a lower intensity. So that's what some places are starting to do that. Right?
I think Anthony knows that I believe in warm-ups. So
yeah, he does.
He knows I do too.
Warm-ups.
Yeah.
I think
we're warm-up guys. All right.
Yeah. My neck needs to go up and down and left and right a couple times
before it gets cranked left and right. I like to warm it up a little bit.
Yeah, this is where I think you can make like the first, like make class start 10 minutes earlier and make it optional. And then people who don't want to do it just show up later. But versus forcing everyone to do it. So, or make it a thing where this is what we're going to do, but you're welcome to go on the side and do whatever you want. You don't have to do this.
So my BJJ place that I go in the morning for the office, they generally don't do warm-ups, especially the 7 a.m. Class. The other classes, I think sometimes they do. But you know, I'm like, I usually try and get there a little bit earlier and do my next stuff. But so we don't do warm-ups, and we did the rolling back take that you guys talked about in that other episode. So, you know, take it for what you will.
Warm up your neck for that, you know?
Warm up your neck a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So there's two more things I want to talk about because this is long. Maybe we can make it even this one a 2-part episode. And that way I don't have to record another one for my trip. There's so many things that I really recommend people, if this whole discussion interests you, is to just go read Rob Gray's book is what I would recommend, or listen to the podcast, his YouTube podcast and stuff. He talks about a lot of this stuff. So hold on, I unplugged my headphone by mistake.
See, when he talks so much, this happens. He gets very animated. So he just his hands will fly. Oh, I mean, you're back, Anthony. How you doing?
Some of the stuff that we're probably not going to cover is like space repetition practice, interleaving practice, contextual variation, and testing. Like those are other things that we're not going to get into. But one of them I really want to talk about is task simplification versus task decomposition. Like, do you remember that, Christian?
Remind me. Like I have it written down.
There's this whole idea that, like, think about in judo, like
notes.
Yeah, this whole idea of like in judo, like if you can't do the full throw yet, then only do the first part. Like do the turning, and then now you do the like for sotogari or ipponsei nage, right? Do the first step and then get your arm in position. And once you have that, then do the turning. And then once you can do the turning and do the lifting, then when you can do the lifting, then you do the full throw. You're breaking the movement up in parts. Or for example, throwing a baseball, then you would just like do the first swing and then stop to fix the first part of the movement, and then like do the second half. Or volleyball, you only practice the first serve. You only toss the ball up in the air at a certain part until you get the perfect position right, and then you start serving, like, and start to jump, but don't hit the ball. Like you're breaking the movement into parts, and you're adding it back together in the end. Versus task simplification is that you simplify the task, but you don't break it into chunks, basically. So the point is task decomposition doesn't work. And I see a lot of that in judo. Versus task simplification would be a more effective thing.
Now, when you mean like simplification in the work, so one of the normal things you see in a judo class, or what we do in judo, so we'll be like, okay, so enter twice, throw number 3, you know? Or when you first learn to throw, enter 4 times, throw number 5, or enter 9 times, throw number 10. Would that be task simplification?
Yes.
Would that be task? Okay. So
that'll be task decomposition.
That'll be decomposition.
So that's why they're saying uchikomis don't work. That's their argument.
So in that way, so that wouldn't work in their opinion, that wouldn't work.
In their opinion, it wouldn't work. Yeah, they've done studies that actually the evidence heavily suggests it doesn't work well.
Okay, so then how would you go to simplification for a throw then? Would you just go in for a throw slower or just going for a throw lighter somehow? How would you do that then?
So let's start with, in judo, it's kind of harder, but for example, for the ball, let's say
I didn't ask about no balls, Anthony.
If you're hitting
your webbles here, all right.
So to help people understand, in baseball, for example, instead of breaking the swing into chunks, then what you would do is task simplification. You would always complete the full movement, but you would simplify the task goal. So one way would be like throwing the ball slower, or use a lighter ball or something, or reduce the distance of the ball being thrown. So you can see the ball up closer. That makes it less decoupled. And for judo, I think one way of doing it is it's what they call extreme simplification. Like they really simplify it to a point. It's something you don't want to do all the time. Would be how I teach osotogari is I have them in the ending position of the throw, which is like they already have the hip to hip, chest to chest contact. And then their task, they don't have to think about entering and getting the hip to hip with chest to chest because it's already there. So the only two tasks that they have to do is pull the guy off balance and then kick the leg up. So that's a example of decomposition, simplification. Or for example, morote seinage or taitoshi, you have uke already on one leg, like about to fall forward. Then you have the person fit in to the uke about to fall forward with the perfect grips and the perfect arm position. Then you can just tell them to throw from there. That's so you'd
be starting from an endpoint then, most likely.
Yeah, that's one way. That's one way. That's the easy way I can think of doing it in a judo context.
Because I have seen a long time ago, I went to a judo clinic and I did see a guy, the way he said he taught his osotogari was really kind of weird. So he would teach osotogari from kesakatame, then he would get up kind of almost to the knees and fall down.
Yeah, teaching backwards, basically.
Yeah, like teaching backwards. So I was saying, would that be simplification? But it seemed like oversimplification, in my opinion, when I was watching.
Exactly. You want to going backwards is a really good way. Like same thing you can done with arm bars is people, they focus so much. It's the same thing with osotogari. They focus so much on the entry into osotogari that people always land the foot for the first step of osotogari. People always land at the wrong spot, right? And then from then on, everything goes to trash. Like you can't get the hip to hip, the chest to chest. The arm is off, your balance is off because that first step is wrong. So think about how long it takes the person to get that first step in and pulling the person off balance. And then you have them throw. So how many actual repetitions of the throw do you get? Like not many. They're focused so much on the entry. And then even when they get the entry correct, they might not do the off balancing correct. So teaching backwards in that sense makes a lot of sense because they like do the correct movement. That's the whole movement. And also that movement is always consistent no matter what variation of the entries are, right? Obviously there's some non-hip to hip, chest to chest osotogari, but the ideal osotogari is hip to hip, chest to chest. And I don't care how you get into that position is what I tell people. You just, however you get past the grips, I want you to end up in this position and the throw should feel like this. So that's why you teach backwards. Same thing with arm bar. I don't care how you do it. You just end up on the side with the guy's arm in between your legs extended. That's always going to be the invariant, right, to this the technique. And then from then on, you work backwards. Okay, now from mount, how do you get into that finishing position for an arm bar? So that's the teaching backwards in the way of task decomposition. And I really want, out of all the other stuff I talked about, I really wanted to bring this one up because I think this is I just reminded me of what I was going to talk about, but this is one of the things that I think a lot of people do, and they think, oh, I can't do this whole thing yet, so let me do only the beginning part. I hear that so many times for beginners. I'm like, no, just stop, do the whole thing. I don't care if you look stupid. I don't care if it's hard. Do the whole movement. Okay. I just like do the whole movement, focus on only these two things. Like for back to Iponse and Nage. I don't care if your foot's here, your foot's over there. As long as it's not dangerous, like you're gonna get hurt from doing it, I'm okay with you doing it. Just control the shoulder and do the whole throw. And I've seen so much better results and people's fear of not doing it perfectly the first time has stopped them from completing the whole movement and learning more efficiently because they're so focused on the first parts that are not even realistic most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was task simplification, decomposition. The other thing I promise is the other thing I want to talk about is desirable difficulty. That's what I talked about before. Are you two familiar? Are you familiar with it? Do you have any notes on it, Christian? All right, he's shaking his head. All right, this is something I picked up from. This is my TED Talk, Christian says. Okay, this is something I picked up from trying to learn Japanese. Like for the longest time, I was learning Japanese through the traditional method, like getting a textbook, getting a tutor, just like how anyone who's taking a foreign language,
side chick, you know.
Yeah, or that. That's what Juan did and married a Japanese woman. But
Christian, from a long time, I never answered your question. Is it mandatory to marry a Japanese woman when you're your black belt? No, it's not mandatory, but it's not frowned upon either. Okay, it helps you out your paperwork and your application. Married to a Japanese woman. Oh, good. Check that mark off.
That's how you get your lifeguard belt. Which is a joke.
So
that's at Christian at
yeah. So this all started off when I was I'm gonna link this guy's YouTube channel because I only found it recently, but I think he summarizes what I learned all the way before that by piecing things together the best. His name is Benjamin. I forgot his name, Benjamin something, but he's a PhD in Stanford on skill acquisition and learning. But he talks about learning in general, not just languages, but mostly like how to play chess, how to play guitar, that kind of stuff. But I always learned like Japanese, French, the traditional method, which is like going to class and all that stuff. And Mary has this, but what really I didn't learn. It's not. If I didn't see that stuff that I learned in class, then I wouldn't remember it. Does that make sense? Like if I don't see it often enough, I wouldn't remember it. For example, when I traveled to Japan, I had to ask for an English menu very often, so I would remember how to do that because I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I started looking into this method called immersion learning of languages. Long story short, if you're interested, just look it up. But you basically immerse yourself in the target language. You don't do the traditional information processing method. You basically do flashcards of vocabulary to learn the most common words that you're going to see, like car, clothing, water, that kind of stuff, and adjectives and verbs. And then once you have that basic vocabulary, you start consuming content in your target language. So in Japanese, that would be reading, watching anime, reading manga, watching TV with subtitles. But you never ever use. This is the key point that's going to tie into the judo. You never ever use the English subtitles for any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So you have to at first admit. Understand that you're not going to understand everything and it's going to be boring and struggle because you don't understand the sentences. But what you're looking out for is what they call I+1 sentences, which is sentences where you don't understand one part. So it's like, let's say there's a picture of Juan like in a desert and he's like about to pass out and he's like, I really want something, right? And then you don't understand the word water. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't understand the word water. But then you see Juan in a desert, and then he's like about to die, and you see, I really want something that you can kind of guess. Oh, that word probably means water, right? And then you would like make a flashcard out of that. Then you look at it and it's like, oh yeah, it does mean water. So your brain kind of associates these things and learn that way. So that part is not associated with judo, but but that idea of desirable difficulty is, if I gave you a word saying like, I really like this soap opera, what you're talking about, and there's no context to it, or like you don't know, you see a soap opera, but it was like, is that word for movie or whatever, or it's like, I don't understand a word like directing or this complicated word. So you're not going to understand the whole sentence. And then at the same time, if it's too easy, then you're not learning, right? You want to get your brain into this mode where they have to really think about, like struggle to think about things. And that's the I+1 thing is the desirable difficulty you want. You want it to be hard enough so that you have to struggle a bit and learn, but not so easy that you're not learning. And that carries over to judo, where it's called desirable difficulty, is you want the situation and games and constraints that we're doing to be hard enough that you struggle a bit to figure out the movement, the throw, but you shouldn't be able to do it perfectly every time. Just like Nagekomi, Uchikomi, right? Because if you do it perfect every time, at that point, it's a performance. It's not learning. If you're not struggling, then you're not learning. I think it was Lachlan Giles. He did a study on this class. Was like, most people, when they can perform the action 40% of the time, then they think it's too hard. Then they lose motivation. If they can do it 70% of the time or more, complete well, good, then they think, oh, I got it. I'm an expert at it now. So you have to strike the balance of the teaching the game or the class to the movement to hit that in between 40 to 70% mark, so people are still motivated to do that movement and they're learning at the same time. So that's the whole concept of desirable difficulty. I'm just trying to keep it short, but it's that you're trying to find that sweet spot for learning. And the same is true for math. Like for those who've done math before, like that's why we do math homework and solving problems, is that you're practicing all these different problems to understand how to solve the problem. If I only told you this would be an example of a technique, like 1 + 1 is 2, and you memorize that, then you don't learn about what the plus means. Then I'm saying, okay, what's 10 + 2? Then you're not going to be able to figure it out. Versus I make you solve all these different problems, 1 + 1, 1 + 2, 1 + 3, and then you start seeing a pattern, understanding what the plus means. Then you can go out and solve all these other problems that you've never encountered before. Like you've never done 100 + 1 before, but now you know what the plus means. Then you can do like, oh, it's a 101, right? But you still also need the fundamental building blocks of what does 1 mean, what does 2 mean, kind of thing. So math is perfect example of desirable difficulty, because as someone who struggled with math for a while in college, when it's too hard, I just give up. I don't want to do it. But then when it's too easy, I'm like, I got it. But then I fail in the test because it's too easy. I never actually learned anything. And I can't remember which episode I heard it from, but they call, especially in language learning, because of Duolingo, its popularity, they call it like junk food learning. You stick to doing things that you're comfortable doing. So you do your Duolingo stuff and then you're like, oh, I got it. I learned Japanese. I studied Japanese. When in reality, you just did something that made you comfortable and you didn't really learn much because it's comfortable. Not many people, I'm telling you, read this thing, you're not going to understand most of it, but read it anyway. And not many people are going to do that because it's hard and it's demotivating. You don't feel like you learn anything. And that's same thing for judo. A lot of people, which is why Greg's method is hard. It's all this sounds like a shortcut and it's easy. It's not, because you might walk away from it feeling like you didn't learn anything. And one of the key things is learning is not linear. It has its up and downs. You're exploring all these different things and you might come into dead end, or even you might not come back to the dead end, but you go back to this previous stage and explore a different path and possibility. And people have to understand it's not a linear progression where every single day you're going to see the progress. And I see a lot of coaches that was discussing with me on this on Reddit that, and also Instagram, that say like, well, I already did this, but I didn't see the behavior approach, so I think it didn't work. It's like, yeah, it's not going to happen overnight, but even assuming you did it right, it's not going to happen overnight, and you're going to see people like do bad some days and good some days. And I see that too in my classes right now, which is where testing comes in, right? But the key thing for that particular person I talked about, I was like, okay, so what are you doing in class? And he told me it, and he's like, I had them do these things, but the Kesekatame is not showing up. I'm like, well, your task goals are wrong in the first place. Of course, the task is wrong in the first place. How is Chaotic Atomic going to magically appear when you had them do this whole other thing? So, yeah, that was my TED Talk for the last part.
Well, would you bring up with the way of like, it's one of the things that's up to the instructor to watch the class and figure out who's getting stuff and who's not getting stuff. And I hate to say it, but you always have to bring down the class to the lowest denominator, but you got to figure out that medium spot. Like you said, in between 40 to 70%, where you got the people that know how to do it. You're challenging them enough that they can feel like they're still progressing. And the people that don't get it, they feel like they're at least learning something. Because what you don't want, and we've heard and I've heard this a few times from people, which I think it's sad because it hurts it's like sad. Like I feel like, oh, it's disgusting. Or I'm sad because it hurts my feelings. But I hear really stories about people. It's like, I've been doing judo for so long. I just sit in my car and cry. I can't throw anybody in class. I sit in my car and cry, or I get home. I just like, I want to quit. It's like, I hate that feeling. Like, I wish that you would come and talk to us so we could try to figure out what's going on to help you. But it's one of the things that as an instructor where you're supposed to see that and try to help people, lift people up. And you're going to have some instructors that are like, well, if they're not at this level, this is the level I teach at. And if you're not there, then you're going to get left behind. And I don't like that personally. I want to bring everybody up together. But like you said, you have to figure out the sweet spots. You're challenging people that know what's going on, and you're rising people that don't know what's going on. So it's just this big gray area. You got to figure out how to do this. And it's tough. Yeah. It is really tough as an instructor to follow everybody and see what everybody's doing.
Other than the safety thing that Christian and us talked about, that's the problem with this ecological approach, going full on ecological approach. Is judo has a bad reputation for being hard and difficult and falls suck and everything. And now you're telling them they're not going to feel like they're learning. After every class, they're going to feel like they just either use it as a throwing dummy or they just couldn't get the movement. Then they're like, maybe judo's not for me. So they have to really, this is why even in class, I do throwing lines, I do the explanations, showing technique, and also some of the other stuff is because I want them to walk away feeling like they learned something at least, right? Because if I did full on just constraints-led approach learning games, people are going to be like, I didn't get a single time. I wasn't able to do this game the whole time. Then they're going to walk away and not feeling good and want to come back to class. So that's why I'm not full on in this approach, because I think judo has to still remain interesting and people have to walk away feeling like they learned something. Because the alternative is to have them listen to me do this whole talk to them by why we're doing this approach, right? And then have them be convinced that it works, that in the long term it will be good for them, which is not going to work. So.
First class, you listen to podcast number something. All right.
Yeah, we're going to talk about affordances today. Go ahead, Christian.
What is this language?
So speaking of
thesaurus.
Speaking of affordances, or the non-jargon term, possibility for action, I think this like ecological approach or the constraints-led approach, I think the instructor has to know most, or if not all, the affordances. I think that's an issue with the approach. Like if you didn't know what an armbar was, like it might arise on its own, but that's not efficient. So I think that's an issue with this approach. Like if you are a coach and for some reason you were never exposed to some throw or some technique, like you might never. If you're doing only this approach, it might arise naturally. But if it's sort of strange, like, I don't know, like apparently like triangles didn't appear apparently in the whole world until, judo really started putting the time in.
You mean until the Gracies invented it?
Until the Gracies invented it, right? And they invented the leverage at the same time. So like some things don't arise like right away. So I think that's an issue. That's why I think, that's why we teach in this, the traditional way. It's because this is like an efficient, bite-sized way. It supports all these businesses, have like, judo fanatics and stuff like that. But I definitely think that this approach is valid and has some role to play in your training. Yeah,
speaking of that, I'm going to really touch upon that because I got asked this in class not asked, but we discussed it with a student. He was like, man, I bought all these instructionals, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can kind of see the value in that in BJJ because the quality of instruction is so wide and variable, and they don't have a set syllabus or set techniques like we do in judo, or set way of teaching. So I can kind of see the value in that, right? But in judo, I think I haven't seen anything in most of the instructionals I bought that I don't get taught in class. Most of the time, it's people went to class, feel like they couldn't throw someone, so they needed to go online to buy something to learn like a shortcut way of throwing someone. And I think that's kind of predatory in a way, because the stuff that they teach, the white belt won't be able to do it anyway. You know, if they are able to do it, it's probably against another white belt, you know, and then they figure out real quick how to counter it anyway. But most of the time, that's the case. There are some good instructionals out there, but most of the instruction, the good instructions would be to, for example, someone does something completely different from everyone else. So one really good example, I want to know how Hashimoto does his one-armed sode. That would be a good instructional, I think, because no one else has not many people have gotten to work. So maybe he has some secret that he was able to share. That's something that's going to be interesting. But otherwise, most of the time they're just, I think they're basically being predatory on novices and all that kind of stuff there. Hashimoto arm breaker. Yeah. That's what I think about instructionals. But the Japanese, BJJ and Judo's market for instructionals are very different, I think, because of the way that BJJ is taught. And yeah, his signature finish.
That's funny. So
why were we talking about instructionals again? Oh yeah, because someone brought it up.
You brought it up because you started rambling like you always do.
No, Christian did.
No, you did. No, it was all you, Anthony. So is there anything else about ecological or scientific way of training that you guys want to bring up before we wrap this up? Because we've gone long, and I think we are going to turn this into a two-parter.
We might turn in two-parter. That way saves me and Juan some recording time. So
I would add on to just a tiny little bit off of what Anthony said. I think, instructionals, but also just watching. Like, I think a big downfall of, the IGF paywalling their content is I don't get to watch it anymore. It's like I learned, I watched Fabio Vasile do his Hataguruma. I was like, oh, I want to try that. I tried it and it worked, and now I do it. So I never bought his instructional to figure out how to do it. Probably would help me, but don't make that much money and work for a nonprofit. So
I also think
watching, I think, is an aspect of that.
BJJ also has a lot of, not a lot, but it's not uncommon for a blue, purple, brown belt to run their own club or teach class. So the instructionals kind of fill that void. Judo's doesn't have that problem. So
yeah, we just have less clubs.
We just have way less clubs. Yeah, so maybe having these, I think, again, don't want to go too long, but the American judo system was trying to set up an infrastructure for people to start their own dojos in that sense. So yeah, but yeah, if anyone else wants to, we can go on for hours because there's so much stuff we haven't talked about, that. Yeah, so just message us, or I'm happy to.
If you guys can't tell,
if
you guys can't tell, Anthony's had a lot of stuff to get off his chest. He's been wanting to talk about this for a long time. That's why I'm letting Anthony talk a lot, because this is his thing. This is his baby. He loves this.
Well, I didn't want to do an episode about it because, one, I didn't want to come off as an expert, because I'm not. I'm just sharing with what I read, and two, I'm still figuring stuff out myself in my class. My students are my guinea pigs, basically. And
don't call them that in public. Oh, they listen to us.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched kids class. Basically,
I hope you don't touch kids.
We haven't touched the topic of kids class. Man, it's doing this with kids is so difficult. But I just like discussing this stuff and how to do it more efficiently. But I totally. To summarize, I don't think we should throw out everything that the old school people have done it, because there are some reasons we would keep doing it, whether it's safety, whether it's just lack of training partners. Like if your training partner is a 80-year-old guy, I'd be doing uchikomis with them, like I'm not doing,
I'd be doing with them.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
So Christian, on your end, what's your final thoughts on this ecological training?
I think it's a good tool. Like definitely add it to your teaching method. Like look, I think the easiest ones to do are on the ground, and I think they're very valuable. Like start people off in half guard, start them off in kesugatame, like that sort of positional sparring. That's when we have our university free week, so people come try judo for the first time or sambo. I always get them show them how to go into kesugatame and then how to get out of kesugatame, and then that's what we positional spar on the first day. So I think, that's an ecological approach. See if you can get out.
Yeah, that's also what I do now with beginners is I have them taking throws on the first day and throwing people on the first day, unless they look unsafe, then I only have them throw people, not take throws.
I don't do that. I don't do that on the first day.
No, I have them taking throws on the first day if I have someone that can make them fall controllably. But yeah, I have them playing, like you said, games the first day, like just stay on top of the other person, for example, or sweep the other person, or just like grip fighting. Like that's what turned me off judo when I was a kid, was I was told for 2 months to just slap the mat. And for some people it's fine, but I think most adults nowadays, especially American adults, they're not gonna buy into that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
All right. Well,
thank you, Christian, for being on the show. Oh, you got some more to add, Christian? All right, let's see what you got.
Last thing would be look into having, and people do this for the kids class. I started having my adult beginners do this. It's like set up a circle with some belts, extra belts you have laying around, play sumo. It really, really changes how people, like I never saw beginners start to hit seos and,
that's
ogoshis like that. Yeah.
I have a similar
game changer.
I don't do exactly the sumo thing, but I've been trying to figure out a way of getting people to do morote better.
This is a game.
That's a way. Yeah.
This is a tool that you can use, an ecological tool you can use to get these things that you want them to do seo. This will get them to do seo.
Maybe we'll do some videos or another episode on games, because like there's all these ideas that we have, and it's fun.
I've been actually practicing sumo, so that's been cool. Amateur, of course. Yeah.
You and Anthony both. Anthony wants to get into sumo too.
Yep. All
right. So thank you for Christian being on the show. I really appreciate this time you spent with us. I hope we got some stuff out to people to understand and learn some things. Christian, is there anything you want to plug, tell people about, talk about your own school, your own things going on?
I would say if you happen to be in the Vancouver, Canada area, or you're visiting, check out UBC Sambo on Instagram. I have posted all of my class structures, like what we do, sort of how we do it. So if you're ever curious of how we're doing it, all my from like day one until like almost the end of day, I have a posted thing out there. So free resource, open source. Follow us.
So I'll probably link in the description if you can send me a link later.
Cool. All right. And the last thing that we've been doing with our past interviewers, well, we were starting to recently do. We didn't do this the first time you were here.
Oh, we didn't do it with them?
No, because we started doing this after. Wow. We didn't do this till like season 2.
All right.
Slap them out.
No, not that one. Not that one. So you're at the World Championships. You're in the main event. You're in the center ring. You come out to any song you want to come out to. What would it be?
I did do that one.
Did you do that one?
Are you sure? I did do that one.
Oh, what is it then? Another one?
Another one? 2. It'd be hard. I feel like I forget what I said last time. It was it wasn't the Volo by Kid Frost. It was another Kid Frost song. What's his other song?
You guys were both talking
La Raza,
about it.
Something like that.
So why don't we switch the question around? Well, since you already answered the question, if you could fight one person in the finals of World Championship, who would you want it to be? Like assuming you want it to be a good fight and not just like, oh, easy win, so I'm world champion kind of thing.
Yeah, I was be like, who's the smallest person on the league?
Tani?
I don't know. It's a good one.
Call someone on Team Canada. I want you next week in the ring.
See, they live in my country. They can come find me. Although I saw Mohab El Nahas is on crutches, so maybe I could take him down. Yeah, I don't know. Who's probably like Saeed Molay would be really cool to fight. I love his style.
His style definitely screams like what you would like to fight like. So. Yeah. I want to fight Maruyama. That's just me.
I don't want to get Uchimata like that. So.
I want to get Uchimata like that in a high, I want it not as a demonstration, but in like a high pressure.
I want to get the lapel of my sleeve or my jacket to be like pulled out of my belt and done like a sode. That's what I want to happen to me. I want to end up on that highlight reel.
All right.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your time. Catch you around. All right. Catch you on the next one. What a great show that was. That was like, what, 2 hours of just talking about ecological training?
Yeah, I was really, really worried that it will come out wrong. And we did go because we didn't structure this interview before time. We just kind of winged it. And I'm glad Christian took notes because at least we had some sort of structure to go about. But I always do this thing where I jump around because my thoughts are always moving 100 miles per hour kind of thing. So it kind of was good to have some sort of framework, but we ended up talking about a lot. I'm sure we can keep talking about it and maybe we'll revisit it if we have viewer questions and when I read more about this stuff, because a lot of this stuff I had to reread it multiple times to understand it. Like I would read it and then try and do it in class. And then I'm like, oh, so this is what it actually means. Like you kind of have a different understanding about it. Then you go back and reread the material and now you have a different layer of understanding. You go back and refine it. Or sometimes you'll read stuff and then you'll see it happen in class. And you're like, wait, I don't know how to solve this problem that I'm seeing, but I remember reading in the book one time and you go back and read it again. So going through this, all this stuff is really a lot of work. And that's why I was like, it's definitely not a shortcut for a lot of people. And we're not doing this full time. So yeah.
No, it's just two guys that work at I say work, we donate our time at a dojo. Just want to pass on judo and grow judo, you know? And we're just trying to figure out the best way of doing it. And if the old way is the best way of doing it, that's fine. If the new way of doing it with this ecological, scientific way of doing it is more effective, then that's more effective.
Yeah.
So it's just about growing judo and keeping students.
I mean, in the end, especially for American judo, I think what is lost at a lot of time is people are so focused on getting good fast or being competitive, all that stuff. Just having fun is lost in a lot of judo clubs now. Everything from fostering a culture to having the right people around that you just come and hang out with your friends. You don't always have to like make everything a competition or being the most effective learning. Like we mentioned in an episode how it's not easy to a lot of people. It's mentally draining and very demoralizing. So sometimes just like do whatever makes people have fun, you know, like not everyone's going to think about want to compete. So just having fun is great too. Just messing around, wrestling, playing sumo with friends on the mat. Like that's also fun. So.
All right. So with that, is there anything else you want to add, Anthony? Before we
I think it was good. Oh,
right.
Check out this. If you're not watching the YouTube version, this t-shirt from my old judo club in Texas, Austin, Kokoro, big shout out. Travis designed the shirt. So
nice.
Yeah, big. I love this shirt, even though I paid so much for shipping. But
really? Is it from Texas? How much is the shipping on that?
I think he paid like UPS or something. I don't know. Shipping prices have went up, definitely. I recently sold a bag. I have a bag problem for people who don't know. I recently sold a bag and I negotiated the price with the guy and I didn't know how much shipping was going to cost. And I was like, oh, damn, I actually should have sold it for a higher. Yeah. I took a big hit. So
that happens.
It is what it is though.
Yeah. All right. So please remember to like, share, smash that subscribe button. Okay. Okay. Again, you can always hit us up at Tatami Talk on YouTube, Tatami Talk on Instagram. You gotta have any messages, things you want to talk about, things you want to talk about today, you want to tell us about it, how stupid we were, how dumb this idea was. You can hit us up at tatamitalk@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Instagram at I'm gonna say Tatami Talk again. You can hit me up at the Jerry_1. You got Anthony up at Anthony Throws on Instagram as well. Did I forget anything?
No, that's it.
All right. Hope you're having fun in Ireland right now. Hope you're not too drunk. All right. Hope you're not on the mat, face down.
Yep.
All right. Don't forget to
slap the mat.